He also talked about the premiums, trying to lock the premiums. Those who are buying their health care under the Affordable Care Act, he's wanting to lock those to where they won't go any higher if you're buying it through the Affordable Care Act. And of course, Congress has to work on that. So, I hope they work on it. But that's something that he mentioned that he would like to see. Another thing was extremely important was in the healthcare category was prescription drug cost. Finally, someone is admitting. I know Bernie Sanders was beating the drum on the prescription drug. I'm glad that he picked up that point and he addressed that majority of our healthcare issues are related to extremely high prescription drug cost. So by Medicare, and here's what his point was, by Medicare negotiating the prices for prescription drugs, they could get a lot lower. And they will get a lot lower if Medicare is actually negotiating it versus just paying whatever it is that the drug manufacturers are asking Medicare to pay. So the cost will go down, and this is where, if you look at a national health care, the one way that you could actually have a national healthcare system, regardless of what you call it, is by lowering the prescription drug costs. That is the first way to achieve that. If you're not paying that high of a price for prescription drugs, you're able to provide healthcare to a lot more people. So the expansion of Medicare could come from lower drug cost. So as far as I'm concerned, status quo is not sustainable. So Medicare negotiating a lower drug cost could actually mean a precursor for a national healthcare system, at the very least, expansion of Medicare so it can go from 65 to possibly 60 and lower the age of Medicare. I would like to see that. I know many Americans would like to see Medicare go, because we're not, no one is wanting to work on a national health care. I don't know if Biden could even achieve lowering the prescription drugs. Let's see if he is able to do this. But lowering the age of from Medicare from 65 to 60 would be a huge deal. It would bring in several million people into the system, and lower drug prices means you have a little more of the populace actually being taken care of than before. So right now we're looking at, as I said before, our healthcare system, which we don't have a healthcare system. We have what they call a sick care system, and I think I mentioned that before, and I'll continue doing it. We have a sick care system where people get sick and then they end up in a hospital. More than likely, they end up in an emergency side of it. So we don't really have a preventative care system. We don't have a healthcare system. We do, however, have a socialized healthcare system, which is the Veterans Care and the Medicare. They're both socialized systems. For those of you that don't understand what a socialized healthcare system would look like, basically we have it. They're called Veterans Administration and Medicare, okay, and Medicaid. So especially Medicare. When people say, well, I don't want a socialized system, well, what do you think over the 65 and over is in, or the veterans? What do you think? The Veterans Care is a perfect example of a socialized system. So it's a lack of education that people would come out with statements like that. Those who sit there and argue with me on the fact that I always pitch for a more national healthcare system that resembles a socialized care. Well, socialized care simply means socialized care means care for everyone. That's basically what it means. It doesn't mean you're becoming communist. It's just a propaganda from the right that tells people that and educates them in that way so they can keep their positions there. That's all. Reality is, the best of the best that ever sat across from me and tried to debate a national healthcare system, they all failed. None of them understood their own positions. None of them understood their own position. Subject matter for another video. I will make another one on the national health care, and especially Biden mentioning that he's going to lower the prescription drug costs, which is extremely helpful when it comes to Medicare negotiating it. And but anyways, he's not going to lower the Medicare age from 65 to 60. I would have liked to for him to do that. That would have been nice, but didn't happen. So I'm critical, of course, on that point of view. On that point, the thing when he got onto, he did mention President Biden did mention that the healthcare should be a right, not a privilege. 100%. Of course, this is what Bernie Sanders was beating a drum with, that healthcare is a human right. Healthcare is a human right. Healthcare is a human right. Who's going to disagree with it? Everybody needs care as they get older. Yeah, when you're young and full of beans, yeah, sure. You basically don't need anything, right? You're good. But as people are getting into 30s and 40s, 40s and 50s, 60s, everyone needs care. Everyone needs to go get a checkup. Everyone needs to have some, issues being taken care of. So it is a human right. It's a birthright, and something that the American government needs to put a handle on, take care of. I always felt when it comes to two things, right? And I sent that in my previous video: healthcare and education. These are two areas that the federal government, needs to be involved and needs to make sure that everyone has access to. Okay, they have access to healthcare and they have access to education. Therefore, the national security apparatus of this country is fully protected by these two things. Don't understand it? No problem. Watch my next video and I will make it clear to you why there are two national security related issues there. So moving on to the next thing, the taxes. He talked about the taxes. First time I ever heard Biden say that the rich need to pay their fair share. I have never heard him say that. So that was a step in the right direction. I was very pleased with that, and not because I'm against the top 1%. No one in their right mind would be against a part of the engine that runs our nation. People that are stupid would probably assume that we don't need the top 1% there. No, we do need the top 1%. They just need to pay their fair share of taxes. That's something that I would always state right after I say, yes, the 1%, is perfectly fine. But then when you are looking at them not paying their fair share, because a lot of them don't pay their fair share. ExxonMobil, no federal taxes. You look at Jeff Bezos, Amazon, no federal taxes. GE, no federal taxes. Take a lot of these big corporations, multinationals. They got their money hidden out in other places, tax havens and stuff. Why? So to me, that is the most unpatriotic thing corporations can do, okay, by not paying their fair share. Pay your fair share, because you are employing Americans. They have to live in the society. They have to travel on those roads that they use to get to work, to your buildings, right, to your fancy skyscrapers. They need proper infrastructure. They need broadband. They need access to internet. They need a lot of things. They need healthcare. They need education. Don't you want educated people working for your corporations? Of course you do. Well, where you don't think it's a necessity for people to be educated if you're going to run your corporations? Of course. So my point is, you need to run your corporations. Nothing against someone becoming a billionaire, becoming rich, becoming super wealthy. Absolutely nothing against that. But if you are not paying your fair share, like Biden said, you need to rethink that, because that is the most unpatriotic thing to do. That's my opinion. It's the most unpatriotic thing to do, is not pay your fair share of taxes. Say, well, I don't need to pay because there's tax law loopholes there and stuff, and you have creative accountants that go out there and make sure you pay zero taxes. Well, what happened with Donald Trump? He was showing one of his tax returns. He paid $700 in income tax, in federal taxes. $700. That is a joke for someone who claims to be a rich person. And here he's paying $700? That doesn't sound right. Fine, you are intelligent enough and you have a lot of lawyers and accountants that can do creative financing, creative accounting. And, well, look at it this way. You're not being patriotic. You're being unpatriotic. Yeah, and if you're someone who's watching who's a billionaire, you're being unpatriotic. Okay, so... and I can say that many different ways. So when he talked about taxes, him bringing it up from, because Donald Trump had lowered it all the way down to into the low 20s, he's bringing it back up to 28%. Okay, capital gains tax, right? So the tax bracket up to that, and he's only going to tax anyone above 400,000. So this is not a bad thing. You're making above 400,000, you got to pay a little more in taxes. What's wrong with that? It benefits yourself, because every time you go to a park or you go to the airport, you have better looking things in society. You have better streets, better no potholes. Don't you want to drive your nice Bentley on a nice street? I think being patriotic can get you that. So that point, as far as the taxes were concerned, he mentioned one key phrase which I haven't heard anyone say in a very long time: trickle-down economics, right? Trickle-down economy was made famous during the Reagan era, and they said in our greed of trying to acquire wealth, we're going to trickle this wealth down to you, the general public. Never happened. Never happened, and not going to happen. Here's why. Because when you look at someone amassing the wealth, right? You give somebody $100 million, that person is a frustrated billionaire at that point. So you see, he's not going to want to pay taxes. So that trickle-down BS doesn't fly. It's all just a bunch of hogwash. Okay, it doesn't fly. It's BS. It is a theory that does not work. So any economist, and I challenge them, any economist, I want to sit there and tell me that trickle-down economics work, BS, and you know it. It does not work. You know why it doesn't work? Because a human psyche is involved in it, which is called greed. Greed prevents them from paying taxes, wanting to give back to society, because they would like to build it bigger and bigger and bigger. So that trickle-down thing, completely flawed theory. Okay, so I'm glad Biden mentioned that it's not something that works. It never worked before, not going to work now, it's not going to work in the future or ever. So I'm glad he mentioned that. That was absolutely awesome to hear him say that, because I've been saying that for years, that this trickle-down BS doesn't work. The climate change, of course, he addressed that, and I think already talked about that. U.S. foreign policy, he made it clear, he was right on when he came to Russia, and when he came in, he telegraphed that to the Russian, President Vladimir Putin, that if you meddle in our affairs, in our elections, we are going to retaliate. And we're going to retaliate as a national security threat. His attacks on his cyber attacks, that most recently, he had cyber attacks that have. So when you look at the Russian government, especially, Putin and his position there, him being an autocrat, he's looking at it like, it's his right to attack us At one time, by the way, he didn't do this. This is something that started out just before he got emboldened by electing the former president. Okay, and he involved himself in our elections, and not just meddle, but he did quite a bit of damage there. As far as I'm not sure if his people were involved in rigging machines and all that. I don't know. I have no evidence as of yet. But if something was there, maybe it'll come out in the national media. I don't know if the national media will ever even discuss it in complete detail. But he made it clear to the Russian president that we are going to retaliate and retaliate accordingly, and there will not just be sanctions, but whatever else we need to do, we're going to do. So he was pretty stern with the Russian president, and I'm glad that he had made that very clear, that as far as the foreign policy situation is concerned, Russia and these two areas like Russia and Iran, he's looking at both of them in a very stern way, and realizing that Iran can't just go out there and raise its enrichment production up to above 60% or what have you. But naturally, he didn't specify anything like that. But he made it clear that any one nation that is looking to meddle in our affairs, in our democracy, will pay a price for it. And he made it very clear that things were going to happen against Russians. So I was very pleased with that. And the interference thing always bothered me, and I knew that when when Biden came in, he would actually look at that. Next thing, he moved on to the withdrawal of the troops. As far as troops in Afghanistan, right after he talked about some of those soldiers that are they're currently serving in Afghanistan, were not even born yet when 9/11 happened. So he stressed on that point that we need to bring these men and women back home, and I think it's way overdue. So him putting that policy forward, foreign policy forward, I think it's a good idea. I think it's already done. They're already talking about bringing them back starting 9/11 of this year, 2021. So it's something symbolic. I think that's what he was saying. Not in this State of the Union, but he has said that prior to that. But he did mention the fact that soldiers that are there, some of them were not even born yet. Talked about Al-Qaeda being metastasized all over the place. Totally agree with him on that. They're in Yemen, they're in Somalia, they're in Sudan, they're all over, spread throughout the world, and them still being a threat. So he acknowledged that, and that was very important as far as foreign policy is concerned. And I follow it very closely. So I was not surprised to hear Biden saying that, because he's very experienced when it comes to foreign policy. He's not like he was a huge factor in President Obama having the policies that he had as far as the foreign policy was concerned. So addressed the Russian and the Iranian situation, addressed the withdrawal of troops, and then it talked about Al-Qaeda being metastasized all over the Middle East and everywhere, different parts of the world. And then it was pretty standard as far as the foreign policy was concerned. When he came back home domestically, he said the biggest threat that's facing United States right now is the domestic terrorists, and he referred to the white militia groups as domestic terrorists. He said that is domestic terrorism, and I was very pleased to hear that. He referred to he openly said the white supremacists are the current threat to this nation. So and they are basically terrorists in his opinion. And that was music to my ears at that point. I said, well, that's at least not just he's not just admitting, he's not just coming out with that statement, he's addressing it properly, the way a president should have after the insurrection. And we have yet to see all the convictions there, but majority of them were white supremacists, and they basically wanted to, tear down our democracy there, and that was their intent. And Trump being Trump, Trump is the one that egged him on to go out there and do what he did. And they were pretty emboldened by Trump, the Proud Boys and all the other groups there. So he came out with that, and that was pretty awesome. It was right. It was 100% as far as that's concerned. And moving to the law enforcement, I think he addressed George Floyd's situation in law enforcement and how it's basically 98%. I don't know the percentage he used, but he used that predominantly they're pretty decent people in the law enforcement, and they need to be given recognition for that. But then there is a small group that's causing all the havoc that they're causing. So he said they're going to address that. The DOJ is going to look into all the incidences and they will address everything, which is fine. He didn't get too much beyond George Floyd, and he wanted them to pass a specific bill coming at the end of next month at the anniversary, the first death anniversary of George Floyd. So, and then he also talked about the systemic racism in America, which was something that he needed to. There is systemic racism there, and he needed to address that, and he did. The Hate Crimes Act that passed the Senate from 94-1, which was a huge deal having to do with Asian Americans, and since COVID-19 began, all the Asian Americans that were being targeted. I think that was something that was a huge deal that came out of the Senate, and he was praising that, and I totally second that, and that was absolutely a great thing. Gun control, he talked about, high capacity magazines, that, he used that example he brought the factor of the ghost guns, they call them. Those of you who don't know what they are, they're basically guns that people make, I believe on the 3D printing and other ways where they have no serial numbers on it and they turn up at crime scenes and you can't track them. So that's a pretty dangerous situation for us if they're floating around in society and you can't trace where these guns are coming from. So he talked about that part of it, the ghost guns, and then talked about the gun control aspects where the background checks are concerned and having to do with high capacity magazines, because in his own words, the deers don't wear Kevlar, so why do you need that many rounds? And he talked about shootings in theaters and that sort of thing. So he when he talked about the gun control, he made it very clear that he's not against Second Amendment. He's basically looking to heal society by tightening measures in some parts. So no one, he made it clear, is not against Second Amendment. He's not against guns. He's not going after anybody's guns, which is what the right will make you believe. They're coming after your guns. They're coming after your guns. Nobody's coming after your guns. We're a society that have guns in it, and we're always going to be that way. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think that would ever change. So, and then he got into the immigration, and I think that was pretty much it at the end of that. He talked about the Dreamers being that they came here at no fault of their own, and they need to be given the status. So I think that should pass Congress very soon, and I think it's a right thing to address because he had a lot of support from the Dreamers, and it's a thing that's way overdue. So they came here with no fault of their own. I think they need to get their status. They were born here, and he's also talked about the violence having to do with the immigrants, that the immigrants face in their own nations is why they actually end up coming here. So, and when I do my video on immigration, I will address that part of it and why a lot of them are actually heading up north and coming to this to United States in the first place. So that is another video, another subject, but he did address that. So overall, my assessment of the speech was, pretty. He made it very clear on some points. Some points, I think, as far as the healthcare, climate crisis, gun control. He brought up those points that he needed to bring up. And education, I was happy with some of the positions there. Foreign policy, I was happy with his position on the Russians and their situation with their cyber attacks on us and meddling in our national elections and stuff. So I was very happy with that. Like I said, some things that I was unhappy with was one, naturally, student loan debt forgiveness. He didn't bring that up. He had talked about it, but never brought it up. So that was a disappointment. The other disappointment was I wanted him to actually lower the